Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Whenever you may be listening, thank you for doing so, and welcome in to a packed edition of the Newsmax Daily for Wednesday, June 5th, 2024. World Environment Day. Created by the UN General Assembly in 1972, kind of speaks for itself. With 16 days to go until summer officially arrives on the calendar, the West Coast is having its first summer heat wave. Triple-digit temperatures today in Arizona, Nevada, and many areas of California, where, by the way, another restaurant chain is closing up. Rubio's Coastal Grill, famous for its fish tacos. I've never been there. Maybe you have. 48 locations shutting down thanks to Governor Newsom's $20 fast food worker minimum wage pay. And now dozens of workers from those 48 locations will have no pay. There are several big stories dominating the Newsmax airwaves, including Merrick Garland's testimony, Hunter's trial, President Biden's arrival in France, and the biggest headline, his executive action on the border, which took effect just after midnight this morning. But if you missed it last night, former President Donald Trump spoke with Greg Kelly last night about the verdict in his trial and his campaign. Let's start with that.
When you were looking at that jury, did you have a hunch ever? I noticed one day they came in, they didn't look at you. We don't want to, but did you have a sense of them? You got to see them. What did you, could you read their body language, anything?
Well, I knew from the location. I mean, we asked for a venue change as soon as we heard this was the venue, because Republicans get virtually, very little vote. And it's a very, very liberal Democrat area. And so I knew we were in deep trouble. Of course, they'd only bring cases in areas like that. We wanted to be moved to Staten Island, where they just had a big party for Trump. But we wanted it to be moved to another part of New York where I can get a fair trial. I said, there's no way. You heard me say long before the verdict that Mother Teresa couldn't get a fair trial here. I said that. And no, you couldn't. I never saw a glimmer of a smile from the jury. No, this was a venue that was very unfair. It's a tiny fraction of the people are Republicans, and it's very unfair. And then we had a judge who was very unfair. We asked for a judge change. He said no. And, I think that's going to be one of the major points in appeal, and hopefully the appeal will go quickly because they're interfering with the election. If it doesn't go quickly, they're really interfering with the election. Now, with all of that being said, we're doing great in the polls, and we had a record-setting amount of money that was raised, numbers that nobody's ever heard of before, actually.
Well, we want you to be safe because, when Joe Biden and the deep state say you can't win, we can't let him win. Joe Biden said that to Time magazine today. And Merrick Garland on Capitol Hill said basically it was dangerous to criticize the FBI when they have done a lot of things that, quite frankly, they need to be criticized, especially some of that language that was in the search warrant for Mar-a-Lago on August 8, 2022. It was not all boilerplate language. Some of that was very specific to that operation, and the language was chilling.
Well, it was, and it just came out, and a lot of things have come out in the Florida trial. And Jack Smith I think he's a deranged person, actually, and it's shown that in his other prosecutions over the years. He always goes too far. But when they raided Mar-a-Lago, that was a total violation of my constitutional rights. And all they had to do was ask. And you look at Biden, he had 50 years of documents, and he wasn't always, he was never the smartest guy, according to just about everybody. But he was always, he was not. They basically said that he's innocent because he's incompetent, okay? In other words, he can run for president, but he can't stand trial. Can you believe that? So we're going to let him run for president, but we'll exonerate him because he's incompetent. They said he's got no memory, got no this, got no that. We all know that anyway. But what it's so bad, it's making our justice system look so bad. The good news is the people get it, and I'm leading Biden by a lot, and we raised more money, I think, than has ever been raised in a short period of time. I don't think it's even close.
So they went on to talk some more about the trial and the other New York trial against the Trump organization and Trump's campaign.
Finally, are you closer? Would you say you are closer to making a decision on vice president? And a lot of people ask me to ask about Nikki Haley. They think Nikki Haley would be, unifying. Personally, I know a lot of people who don't think that's the case. A lot of people don't think that's the case, but some do. Do you have anything to say about Nikki Haley and anything to say if you are closer to making a decision?
Well, first of all, we have some unbelievable people, and you see who the people are. I mean, they've been out there, and, it's very interesting. I thought Tim Scott didn't run as good a race as he's capable of running for himself, but as a surrogate for me, he's unbelievable. He's been incredible. Governor Burgum from North Dakota has been incredible. Marco Rubio has been great. J.D. Vance has been great. We've had so many great people out there. Ben Carson, so many great people. We have a lot of really people, but I think I'm going to hold it. As far as Nikki's concerned, I was very disappointed in her because she stayed too long.
Donald Trump speaking with our Greg Kelly last night on Greg Kelly Reports. 9 o'clock Eastern. He didn't immediately say no way to Nikki Haley, which is interesting, but throwing out a lot of the same names that he has mentioned many times before. He only has a little more than a month or so to make it official. All right, and let's get back to the current president, Joe Biden, who continuously said he needed the help of Congress to shut down the border and that he couldn't do it. Until yesterday, when he took executive action to ban asylum seekers, at least until crossings drop to 1,500 a day. A day. That's 10,000 a week. And as crazy as that sounds, the numbers haven't been anywhere near that low since Biden took office. During the announcement, he did what he always does, blamed it on Donald Trump and the Republicans.
4 months ago, after weeks of intense negotiation between my staff and Democrats and Republicans, we came to a clear bipartisan deal. It was the strongest border security agreement in decades. But then Republicans in Congress, not all, but walked away from it. Why? Because Donald Trump told them to. He told the Republicans, it has been published widely by many of you, that he didn't want to fix the issue. He wanted to use it to attack me. That's what he wanted to do. It was a cynical and an extremely cynical political move, and a complete disservice to the American people who are looking for us to not to weaponize the border, but to fix it.
And Rob Schmitt picks up coverage.
If you're paying attention, that should enrage you. He's hoping that most people aren't. And moments like that remind Americans who are paying attention why we don't trust and largely can't stand our government. Insane levels of gaslighting in the speech today. Infuriating to watch from the man who invited the world to surge the border as a candidate. And what it really shows is that they just don't care. They have enough control over the narrative they can say whatever the hell they want. Most Americans are blissfully unaware of the dumpster fire that Washington has become in recent years. As for the plan to secure the border, it's fake, much like the Senate plan was fake. It calls for halting asylum entries only after 2,500 illegal daily encounters. The media is buying into this. From Axios, President Biden will issue an executive order today that will allow him to dramatically limit asylum claims, granting himself the power that congressional Republicans twice have denied him. You'd swear it was written by the Biden re-election campaign. Usually is with the media. In truth, this order will simply funnel all of the chaos that we've been seeing for the last 3.5 years, more coordinated funneling of that through the proper channels. We'll still have thousands a day pouring in. You can count on that. They'll just come through our ports, be rubber stamped, and get a date with a judge in like 8 years. Welcome to America. If you needed proof just how fraudulent today really was, how fraudulent the president really is, Senate Democrats facing re-election this year in tough states refuse to be a part of it. Tester, Baldwin, Rosen, Casey, all invited to the White House. They were just right down the street. They didn't show up. They can't afford to be tethered to a charade of this capacity from this man.
I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. I'll reverse Trump's detrimental asylum policies. They see in a situation where he talks about he has a policy of literally ripping children from their parents at the border, for God's sake. I mean, it's not who we are. We have an immigration system that's consistent with our values and who we say we are, and it does not now. Donald Trump is absolutely violating every basic value we have.
Some of Joe Biden's many comments on proudly opening the border, inviting everyone to come, and saying how Donald Trump is evil and his policies were so bad. We get more from Newsmax host Joe Pinion.
But now, with just 154 days until Election Day, the Sandman-in-Chief has woken up because the American people aren't buying his sleepwalking routine anymore. And so Joe Biden and co., well, they have gone full Billy Joel. They are going to insist they didn't start the fire and hope you're too busy trying to put out the flames at your own house to notice. Joe Biden inherited the most secure border in the modern history of America from President Donald J. Trump. But he didn't embrace securing America. He killed America's security and took America's sovereignty hostage. He ended construction on the border wall, and then, just in case anybody got the bright idea to finish it, when he was removed from office, they sold all the leftover metal. It was Joe Biden that fought to end Title 42. It was Joe Biden that fought to kill the Remain in Mexico policy. And when the state of Texas put up buoys in the Rio Grande to stop illegal migrant crossings, well, it was the Biden DOJ that sued them. The same way they sued the state of Arizona, who used shipping containers to stem the surge of illegal migrants. Go figure. When 219 Republican members of the House voted and passed one of the strongest immigration bills in modern history in May of 2023, after we witnessed over 600,000 gotaways cross our border illegally with the help of these failed Biden policies, not a single Democrat voted to support it in the House. The Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer let it collect dust, and Joe Biden continued to insist that the migrant crisis, all of it, was just a figment of Republicans' imagination.
Mr. President, would you call the situation on the southern border a crisis?
No. And so today, when Joe Biden crawled out of his slumber and declared he was taking immediate action via executive order to secure our southern border, well, we were all just a little bit bewildered. Because that is a rewriting of history so brazenly dishonest, you would think the fact checkers would have spontaneously combusted. But they didn't. And don't take my word for it. Just perhaps listen to the man who delivered that most secure border in modern history, Donald J. Trump.
Now, after nearly 4 years of his failed, weak leadership, pathetic leadership, crooked Joe Biden is pretending to finally do something about the border. But in fact, it's all about show because he knows we have a debate coming up in 3 weeks. The truth is that Joe Biden's executive order won't stop the invasion. It's weak and it's pathetic. It will actually make the invasion worse. Millions of people a year will continue to pour across our border and be released into our country.
You see, they never let facts get in the way of subverting public opinion on the left. And so this is our life. For the next 5 months, it will never be Joe Biden's fault. And anything that the Biden administration says or puts down on paper, well, the media will just assume that it is true. A fentanyl crisis caused by Joe Biden's refusal to hold China accountable. Certainly it is not Joe Biden's fault. Chinese spy balloons in the air, illegal Chinese police stations paid for by the Chinese Communist Party on U.S. soil, that's not Joe Biden's fault either. Mobs of Hillary Clinton supporting Biden voting liberals screaming for the genocide of the Jewish people. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Well, of course, that has nothing to do with the leftist politics of the heathens or the politics of the people writing the checks that pay for them to assemble.
Great analysis from Newsmax host Joe Pinion. And let's move on, for the sake of time, to Attorney General Merrick Garland's testimony on Capitol Hill yesterday. Starting it off with Carl Higbie.
Merrick Garland gave the least credible testimony I have seen in a while. And that's saying a lot coming off the heels that Anthony Fauci kept on Capitol Hill yesterday. The Attorney General, who, may I remind you, was denied a spot on the Supreme Court by Republicans, makes claims that he would never unjustly apply the law to Republicans.
As Attorney General, I will continue to forcefully defend the independence of the Justice Department from improper influence or interference of any kind. And I will continue to fiercely protect the integrity of our criminal investigations. Nothing will deter me from fulfilling my obligation to uphold the rule of law.
Really? It's just me, or should we just not believe this guy? Look, Merrick Garland had one job today, and that was to convince Americans that the DOJ was not politically biased. But you know why nearly every single Republican thinks the Justice Department is politically biased against them, and especially Donald Trump? Well, because the Justice Department is politically biased against them and Donald Trump. I mean, this is not hard. This goes way beyond just the Justice Department, because in nearly every single example, Republicans get more scrutiny, they get harsher treatment, they get greater sentences than Democrats. And I could not find a single major instance of government prosecution against Democrats that outweighed how a Republican was treated in a similar circumstance today. And believe me, I spent a lot of time trying to find it. Let's just walk back, okay? Let's go way back. Lois Lerner, when she, the head of the IRS nonprofit division, targeted conservative nonprofit groups and made their lives miserable to try to keep them from raising money for conservative causes. But that's the IRS. Let's do the FBI. Remember when Peter Strzok, the deputy assistant director at the FBI, the counterintelligence division, he had this exchange. Lisa Page, who texted him on August 8th, 2016 about Donald Trump, not ever going to become president, right? Right? And Peter Strzok responded by saying, no, he's not. We'll stop it. That's FBI officials, part of the same DOJ that is now saying that they would never unfairly put their foot on the scale. You see why we feel this way? Talk about keeping a presidential candidate out of the White House? No big deal. FBI is not politically motivated at all. Right, Merrick? And the only guy to get fired over this was Andrew McCabe, who ended up getting his pension back from the DOJ the second Joe Biden got back in office. Gee, Merrick Garland, I couldn't imagine why Republicans think the DOJ might be targeting us. Let's go back to the fact that there was a special counsel appointed by Barack Obama's administration to look into Russian collusion that they knew was a total farce. Hillary Clinton's political campaign paid for the Steele dossier and then funneled it into the highest levels of the FBI and the DOJ. And then they used that to go after Trump and everybody else in his orbit, not one of which was arrested or even charged with anything related to actual Russian collusion. They got all of them in a ton of process crimes, though, like Michael Flynn and all these other people, not even related to the Russia investigation whatsoever. It was like tax fraud. And one of the prosecutors, however, this is the best part, looking into the Trump for the Russian collusion from the Steele dossier, was in fact found guilty a couple years later of Russian collusion. You cannot make this stuff up.
That's Carl Higbie, host of Frontline, 5 o'clock Eastern on Newsmax. And check out Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, a member of the House Judiciary Committee, questioning the Attorney General.
Will the Department of Justice provide to the committee all documents, all correspondence between the department and Alvin Bragg's office and Fonnie Willis's office and Letitia James's office?
The offices you're referring to are independent offices of state.
I get that. The question is whether or not you will provide all of your documents and correspondence. That's the question. I don't need a history lesson.
Well, I'm going to say again, we do not control those offices. They make their own decisions.
The question is whether you communicate with them, not whether you control them. Do you communicate with them, and will you provide those communications?
You make a request, we'll refer it to our Office of Legislative Affairs.
But see, here's the thing. You come in here and you lodge this attack that it's a conspiracy theory, that there is coordinated lawfare against Trump. And then when we say, fine, just give us the documents, give us the correspondence, and then if it's a conspiracy theory, that will be evident. But when you say, well, we'll take your request, and then we'll sort of work it through the DOJ's accommodation process, then you're actually advancing the very dangerous conspiracy theory that you're concerned about. Now, you were a judge, once nominated to the highest court in our country. When you were a judge, I'm just curious, did you ever make political donations to partisan candidates?
No.
No, and you didn't, because that would create the potential appearance of impropriety.
I didn't, because there's a federal rule barring federal judges from making contributions.
Right, but under that same theory of attacks on the judicial process. Like, shouldn't someone be owed like a jury of their peers and a judge that's non-biased rather than getting a judge from your political opponent's donor file?
I'm well aware that you're not asking a hypothetical. You're asking me to comment on a jury verdict in another jurisdiction which has to be respected. I won't comment on it. That case is still ongoing. The defendant
Mr. Attorney General, I hadn't asked you about the verdict yet. We were getting there. I was talking about the judge. And so let me ask you this question about your time as a judge. Was there ever a time when you were a judge when you had a family member who was personally profiting off of the notoriety of a case that was before your court?
I'm going to say again, it's very clear you're asking me to comment on a case in another jurisdiction.
No, wait, hold on, Mr. Attorney General. Did you ever have a family member profit off of the notoriety of any case that you sat over?
Say again, you're asking
yes or no?
You're asking me to comment on a case currently.
Well, it seems you're connecting the dots,
court.
Mr. Attorney General. I'm just asking you as to a general principle, but you are aware that Judge Merchan's daughter was profiting off of this prosecution. You are aware that that creates the appearance of impropriety. You know the very reason there's a federal rule against judges giving donations is because it is the very attack on the judicial process that we're concerned about.
Masterful questioning from Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida. And I never could have imagined a reason to have Dr. Phil in the Newsmax Daily. But he, for some reason, did a show on the Trump verdict and called for the end of political persecution against Donald Trump and anyone else.
We are not some banana republic, for God's sakes. What are we going to do next? Have a Putin poisoning posse? And start finding political opponents foaming at the mouth at home, not so mysteriously dying in their lazy boy recliners? We're better than that. We must be better than that. I don't like what I see happening in our country. This kind of thing is exactly why I launched Merit Street Media and wrote, "We've Got Issues." I don't like seeing the weaponization of our justice system, agencies, and powerful government actions that, frankly, just make my skin crawl. For all of us and for my grandchildren. And let's be honest, this is so not just about Trump. If you let your hatred for Donald Trump compromise your ability to find true north on your moral compass, shame on you. If you let your disgust for Biden make you blind to the inevitable consequences of pursuing revenge, then God help the children who will inherit the dystopian nightmare we create. We need leaders who will pledge to end this vicious cycle right now and return us to that safe place where our institutions are no longer bastardized and weaponized, but rather simply serve their intended purpose. We have serious problems to solve, and it will take serious people to solve them. Men and women who we hold accountable for doing that which they were selected or hired to do. They need to know we are watching, and their positions are privileges, not legacies. They work for us until they don't. I'm not into politics. I claim no expertise, nor do I seek any. I don't advocate voting for one candidate over another. I stay in my lane addressing human behavior collectively, culturally, and am focused on how we can have maximum control in our lives and turn this ship of state called America in the right direction and get her back on track so we can be proud. That's my mission, and this is a call to action to save our collective soul and sanity.
Dr. Phil making a plea to government and to Americans to hold government accountable and reminding folks that they work for us. And let's wrap it up with RNC Chair Michael Whatley, who said the GOP convention will be an opportunity to unveil the Republican vision to the country and show exactly where Donald Trump stands on the issues.
The convention happens next month, and your nominee could be sentenced to actual jail time 4 days before everything kicks off in Milwaukee. Have you planned for that at the RNC?
Yeah, we're working on that right now. I'm actually going up to Milwaukee this week, and we're going to have a series of conversations. But look, we expect that Donald Trump is going to be in Milwaukee and he's going to be able to accept that nomination. And if not, we will make whatever contingency planning we need to make for it. But the fact is, he's going to be our nominee and he's going to be the 47th president of the United States.
Can you talk about those contingency plans?
No, I think that right now we're in the process of putting everything together for us having a great convention. It's going to be an opportunity to roll out his vision for America. You know, at the end of the day, this goes back to why are we running? Right. We are running because America is weak. Our economy is weak. Our standing in the world is weak. Our southern border is wide open. We've had 10 million illegal immigrants come across the southern border, and we need to be strong like we were under Donald Trump and as we're going forward with him as the 47th president.
So this is going to be talked about between now and the start of the convention, certainly now in sentencing day, which is July 11th. And I know the narrative out there is that for whatever reason, Judge Merchan is not going to sentence Donald Trump to real jail time, but he certainly could. Let's say Donald Trump is given a year-long sentence or a 6-month sentence or something to the effect of what you just heard, which I don't think is going to happen. Is there any way that Donald Trump is not nominated at the RNC in July in Wisconsin?
Look, I don't want to go into a lot of hypotheticals. We'll cross that bridge.
But you sort of have to go into this stuff.
Well,
as you prepare,
we certainly
right?
will be planning on it. We'll be thinking about it, and we're working on that right now. But what we want to do is we want to have a show that is going to roll out Donald Trump and his vision for America, which is going to set up this election cycle. The American people are going to select the next president, and they're going to select Donald Trump because he is going to make America great again.
Final question. I just want to move on from that, but let's say Trump is behind bars, and again, it is a possibility. Would he make a speech from prison? Would he make a speech before sentencing day? Just something that you could play during the RNC? Are those contingencies being thought about, considered, and planned for?
Everything is being thought about. Everything is being considered at this point in time. We will have to wait and see kind of what the courts present us with the opportunity to do. But look, Donald Trump will communicate directly with the American voters the way that he always does.
That's RNC Chair Michael Whatley on Wake Up America with Rob Finnerty. Last but not least, testimony continuing today in the Hunter Biden gun case. We'll have more on that tomorrow. Yesterday, the jury heard portions of an audiobook where Hunter discussed his drug use. And President Biden, as I mentioned at the open, arriving in France overnight to mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day. Some other world leaders there as well. Make sure you keep up with all of the news all day on Newsmax, Newsmax Plus, and at Newsmax.com. It begins each and every day with Wake Up America. It's available on most major cable systems. If you're not already signed up for Newsmax Plus, simply go to NewsmaxPlus.com and get signed up. You'll also get a free trial. It includes all of your favorite shows and hosts like Rob Schmitt, like Greg Kelly, Greta Van Susteren, Carl Higbie, Wake Up America, and much more with analysis from people like former acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker, Judge Napolitano, Professor Dershowitz, Governor Mike Huckabee, and many others. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you, as always, for checking out the Newsmax Daily. Enjoy the rest of your day and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
It's our America. We conquered it. We built it. Great values like honesty and fairness. Great courage. A great nation needs a free press. Newsmax is it. 30 million Americans regularly go to Newsmax when they really need to know. They watch Newsmax TV at home. On the free Newsmax app, they go to Newsmax.com. Start today. Newsmax is real news for real people.